Rita. I am the area marketing manager for Borders on La Cienega. It gives me great pleasure to welcome this evening's guest host, Nelson Aspen.
Hello there. I'm Nelson Aspen. I'm the Hollywood correspondent for GMTV, which is the morning show of Great Britain, which I think is appropriate because it was a ship of British registry. And Don Lynch reminded me that it was, tell me what was your? American owned. Then I said, well, it was built in Ireland, so it's an international night. And it's a very special night because you've given up the season finale of Dawson's Creek for this, while they get a third chair here. And, you know, I was a member of the Titanic Enthusiast Society long before it was a cool thing. Now it is. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce you to the authors of Ghosts of the Abyss. And if you haven't seen the movie yet, you surely will. We have tonight Don Lynch and Ken Marshall, rhymes with pal, and James Cameron. I'm going to give them a few questions that they will answer, and then we'll open it up to you all, and after which you can get your books signed as well. All right. So, gentlemen, tell our audience here what makes this a unique addition to the Titanic library.
I get the honors, huh? Gosh, and he's the author. Oh gosh, what makes this book different is without a doubt the fact that for the first time ever, we've been able to go deep inside the wreck and see wonderful things that have never been seen before. Into first-class staterooms, way down into the reception room and first-class dining saloon. Major historical discoveries, the greatest of which, in my opinion, would be finding the intact remains of the Marconi silent room. It was in the silent room where the transmitting equipment was for the Marconi system, and everybody's aware of the vital role that the wireless system played that night in saving all those souls out there. And inside this silent room, we found the remains of the various bits of equipment that actually powered this apparatus, including the spark, the disc discharger, which Titanic actually had a unique version of that disc discharger. So it was a big thrill to find that among many other surprises inside the ship. I'll pass it over to Don, and maybe he can elaborate.
Well, I could elaborate also. Ken is our visual person, which is why I handed him the microphone originally. But seeing things like the dining room windows and the reception room windows still intact was fantastic. A lot of those rooms had never been photographed on the Titanic. They'd always used photographs of the sister ship. And so we were pleased to find that some things were the same, some things were different, which we didn't know. And just to find the actual condition of the ship inside, it was just thrilling to be able to see all of that. Jim, do you want to add to that?
Well, I'd just like to point out that even though I got introduced as one of the authors, obviously I'm not one of the authors, so I did write a foreword. But so I get to be a little bit objective here, but I think that this was a great opportunity. Ken and Don together have done some of the best work, I think, in bringing the Titanic story to life in the past, and their book, The Illustrated History, if you don't have that, is a must. And it was the inspiration to me for wanting to make the film. And I think this book has provided an opportunity for them to tell the same story in more detail and in a different way and through a completely different window, if you will, into the story of Titanic. We went down and together, because Dawn dived. I think you made 2 dives and Ken made 4 dives out of the 12 in the series. So here they are writing with a kind of great authority that they may not have had before, having seen the wreck not only from the outside, from the submersible where you can look out the porthole and see it, but from the inside as well through the eyes of the ROV, or the eye of the ROV, I should say. And Ken was instrumental in helping us get some of the amazing lighting that you see in these photographs. Not only did he do great work in archiving the photos later and in using Photoshop to kind of bring them to life and mosaic them together, which I think is part of the raison d'etre of the book, is not just the story that's told, but the way it's told visually. And major props to Ken for really pulling the raw imagery that we got on the expedition together and making it much more beautiful. But he was there. He was helping actually do the lighting. He was in Mir 2 while we were, quote unquote, inside, while I was flying the vehicle on the inside and saying, I think I'm an A37, try to get the light into A37, and he would know where he was. And to put this in context, it's fine to know the wreck, but to know the wreck and be able to direct an 18-ton submersible while you're looking through a porthole about this big, when you're in pitch blackness and there's no sunlight, no reference points, and it's just a big rusty structure, that's pretty amazing. And Ken could really be counted on for that. And Don was an integral part of the expedition as well, providing kind of site intelligence before the fact on the different rooms that we were going into and who was there. So when we were seeing this furniture, seeing these artifacts, we knew who had handled them and so on. So it really helped us in the process of the expedition, and then we gave all that information to them, and they produced this beautiful book from what we had done on the dive. So it was a great symbiosis, I guess you'd say.
Let me ask, gentlemen, from the, as opposed to just being a keepsake of the film, what's special about the book? Why should we have the book, and what are we going to find in there that we won't get from simply the movie?
Text. I'm trying to think, because I've seen the film like 5 times already, and I've only read the book once probably. But there are different areas covered, but of course when you see the film, if you were to do a freeze frame, you're not going to be able to get as good an image as if you actually have the book in front of you. And so, it's something you can sit down and study, whereas the film you can enjoy, but the film is fluid. It's liquid, you're going to watch it, it's moving, and this is something you can actually, say, pause, freeze frame, whatever, and really study the book. And I believe that there are some of the things in the book that weren't as featured as strongly in the film.
Yeah, it's the book gives us an opportunity, of course, to go into greater detail, and as Jim pointed out, one of the things that I really enjoyed doing was, and that you can't do in the video footage, is to take freeze frames of a pan, for example, a video pan, like across the gymnasium up on the boat deck, or of the reception room window down on D deck. And although you see it in Ghost of the Abyss, the movie, in a couple of windows on the screen, what I did was to take various freeze frames and blend these together into a nice seamless vertical mosaic for the window, for example. And the gymnasium roof, and showing how that has collapsed since the wreck was found. I was very excited to work on that. It wasn't a happy picture to work on, but and the results were rather stunning to me. You never really know how the mosaic is going to turn out until you've completed it. And what is frustrating is the fact that there was such a limited amount of time to put the book together. There was so much to pack in and only a few months to really create it. And I could have done so many more of those mosaics. I've just got grand ideas for so many more things that I could do for the ship, images from the ship. But that's the thing that you won't see in the movie is some of these mosaics and the opportunity to get into the detail and dissect some of these more technical parts of the ship that really wouldn't be understood too much to a general audience for the film. The film, of course, had to be made for a little bit more of a general audience, and the book, we had that opportunity to get into more detail.
Yeah, I think it's about the detail. The film is 60 minutes long, and it's a lot of story to tell in a short time about both the story of the expedition itself and the story of the Titanic and her passengers and so on. And in the book, Don and Ken are able to relate the images and structure it in a manner that kind of tells the story of Titanic and the people that were on board in a much more coherent and detailed way. The film's like a stone skipping across the surface of the water. So I really enjoy reading the book. I really enjoyed Ken's reconstructions. It's a little bit like the images that they get back from spacecraft that are looking at the outer planets of the solar system, and they just get these images, and Ken's able to tile them all together and smooth them out and blend them in Photoshop and create what I think are great kind of historic documents of what we were able to see inside the ship, because we're shooting basically video, no higher resolution than DV cam camera over there.
See, and Ken wanting to do more answers the question, will this be the last book on the Titanic? There's always room for more. There must be room for it. Tell us how you two became collaborators and what led you to Mr. Cameron.
Oh, boy, let's see. Well, I think I've known Ken since the late 70s. 1976, I met Ken for the first time. I had joined the Titanic Historical Society, done a lot of research, whatever, and it just, fell into place that I would meet Ken, and we met through a mutual friend. And have just known each other ever since, and really, we've collaborated on little projects here and there related to the Titanic, and through the Titanic Historical Society, they're working on the conventions. We put together a 100th birthday party for one of the survivors one time. But when Titanic and Illustrated History, the opportunity to do that book came along, the publisher, of course, wanted Ken's illustrations, and they asked me to do the text. And then, as Jim said, he saw that. And so that brought us to Jim. I think, Ken, I'll pass it to you, how we actually first got in touch with Jim.
On the big movie? Yeah. Okay. I have to say that, of course, I call it the big movie. It's such a huge event in my life. And it was a big movie. But, yeah. But my first association, if you will, with Jim was way back in 1983 or 84, actually, when I was working with another friend of mine, and we had a little company, and we actually did the matte painting I did the matte painting at the very final closing scene of Terminator, the very first Terminator. And so I don't even know if we actually met then. We might have just shaken hands, but it was very, very businesslike, and I was a little bit separated because I was just the guy doing the painting in the background, and my business partner was handling the adjustments that had to be done to the painting and the changes and so forth. But that was my first meeting, and then what did we? I guess in the fall of '95, we heard through the grapevine somehow that you had been out and that James Cameron was on Titanic and was filming scenes of the wreck for a big movie. And of course, I just flipped. I never thought I'd see the day when there would be a major motion picture done on Titanic in color, much less by the James Cameron. And having worked with you before, I knew what a perfectionist you were, and I thought, this I've got to get involved with. I knew that this would be done right. And we got in touch with, I think John Bruno was the first person I spoke to at Lightstorm, and he said, Jim's aware of the book, Illustrated History, and he's been looking forward to getting in touch with you as well. And I said, well, Don Lynch and I live right here in LA, so let's do it. So we went up in the fall of '95 and had our first meeting.
Yeah, we did a huge session, and I tape recorded it. It lasted, 3 or 4 hours, where I just pestered them with all kinds of little questions, because when you study Titanic, it's really quite amazing. It's almost like a very complicated detective story, and it really teaches you a lot about how the kind of the human mind processes information and how unreliable witnesses can be. And Don is always talking about this, the idea that unless you have corroborated stories from a number of different people, you really can't trust what any one person says. And a lot of the story of Titanic handed down since 1912 has been kind of from the most vocal people or the most popular people, and it's not necessarily the most accurate information. And I know Don's been really rigorous over the years as a true historian in trying to figure out what really happened, and kind of who did what to whom, and who got off the ship when, and who wound up where, and why that happened. And it's very complicated. You've got 700 survivors out of, 2,200 people originally on board. And the interesting thing that nobody kind of fesses up to is that basically they were watching the ship sink while the electric light was on a night that had no moon. There was just starlight, and obviously no even horizon glow. It was 2:20 in the morning when the ship finally went under. Well, the lights failed and went out, and as you know, when the lights go out, it takes your eyes time to adjust, and during the time it took most people's eyes to adjust, the ship broke in half and sank. And so, when the most amazing event of that time period has happened, and you've been a witness to it, and somebody kind of does the equivalent in 1912 of sticking a microphone in your face and saying, well, describe it, people just kind of made up what they thought happened based on what they heard and what other people had said and so on. So really piecing it together forensically with the hard evidence of what we found at the wreck site and what people had said, and some of the more reliable witnesses who were proven to be good observers like Beasley and Jack Thayer and people like that, has taken a long time to reconstruct. And I still don't think we have it 100% right, but I think we're a lot closer. We've even figured things out since we did the big movie. Tried to get them right in the little movie.
Well, if you've seen the little movie, which is not so little, you've seen these guys taking on historical roles. If you guys would tell us who you played and what that was like to recreate true life historical figures.
Well, yeah, briefly. I got to portray Thomas Andrews, who designed and built the ship, and who was portrayed by Victor Garber in the big movie. And I actually got to wear the same clothes, which is kind of cool, except that I split the back of the pants. It was a very much a learning experience, even working on the second film because of the recreations. And, when you're in a group of people and Jim says, okay, start crowding the boat, and suddenly you go from being Thomas Andrews, the main character, to being one individual in a crowd of people who are crowding a lifeboat. It taught me a lot about the Titanic. Not about microphones.
There's a speaker right behind the mic.
Yeah.
See, Ken's very technical. He figures stuff out.
Let's see. Yeah, I played J. Bruce Ismay, the director, president of the White Star Line, the bad guy in quotes. And I didn't get to act in the big movie as Don did. My schedule didn't allow it at the time. I was working on the book Lost Liners, and it required 5 days or a week really to be down in Rosarito, Mexico, kind of on call and waiting for that 1 day or two when you got to be in a scene. So I just couldn't take that kind of time, so I didn't get to be in the movie. Don played Mr. Spedden, was it, in the movie. So when Ghost of the Abyss was coming along, and the added filming that was done down at Fox Baja Studios in Rosarito, Mexico, near Rosarito, I asked Jim, could I be in the movie this time? And he said, absolutely, who'd you like to be or something, I can't remember. And it was a toss-up for me between Astor and Ismay. I thought that personally I might have resembled Astor a little bit more, but the consensus was, no, you should be J. Bruce Ismay, and I said, great, that's fine. And Don kind of guided me. I didn't have a clue what I should say or what I should do. You, of course, being the director, guided me. There are lots of scenes that were shot of both Don and me that, of course, didn't make it into the final cut of Ghosts. Maybe there'll be a little bit more in the DVD, I'm not sure. But there was one. Now, I'm a really quiet person. I just, you read about psychologists that say, stand in the middle of the desert and scream and wave your hands and let it all out. And, these therapies that you read about, or what primal scream. There's no way in heck that I could do that kind of thing. I just can't imagine it. So here's Jim. I'm standing on the little recreation of the boat deck that we had there for Ghosts of the Abyss, and he's saying, now yell at the top of your voice, are there any more women? Are there any more children? We've got to lower this boat. We've got to get it away. And then some officer steps forward and says, sir, you're getting in the way. If you'll get out of the way, we'll be able to launch this boat. That kind of thing. And here I had to somehow get this out of me to stand there and just do this. But I did it, and that was one of the scenes that was cut. So maybe that'll be in the DVD. Who knows? But there were lots of scenes of Don and me. So anyway, that's how we got involved in acting in the thing.
Very good. Well, we only have a little bit of time left so that we can accommodate getting all of your books signed. So if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll take as many as I can. You're, sir, in the red tie. Your hand went up first.
You mentioned your efforts at research through the Historical Society. I was wondering, how did the experience of actually diving to the Titanic site inform your research?
Well, the question was, I had mentioned about my research and everything, and how did diving to the ship affect my research. Diving to the ship was overwhelming, I guess you could say. It's a little hard to describe. You're looking through a porthole, and you're only looking, at just what's actually right in front of you. And so it was the overall expedition where I actually learned a lot. But as far as learning about things that happened the night of the sinking, the one thing that comes to mind, and it didn't necessarily have to do with my dive, was that we found that what they call the deadlights, the metal covers for the portholes in the bow in the third class general room had all been shut. And so there's one more piece of the story, that somebody had gone through and closed and locked down all the portholes so that water wouldn't come in, at least in, that one part of the ship. And so, diving did add things to what we know about the Titanic. We've learned a little bit more here and there, and that was one of the things. But just as far as my dive, I think I was just too excited to really pay that much attention to study and learn any one thing that was new. But overall, reviewing all the video footage that was taken, we did learn things like that.
Any other questions? Hands up. Sir in the blue shirt.
Hello, my name is Mr. Cameron. Are you involved in any new projects, or are you retired from acting?
Well, I don't act, and I'd like to keep it that way. I'm involved in lots of new projects. We're going to be doing another 3D deep ocean exploration film. It's not a wreck this time. It's about hydrothermal vents, these kind of superheated water volcanoes that are taking place at the bottom of the ocean. And I have a theatrical film coming up that we start next January, which will come out in the summer of '05, which we're also going to shoot in 3D. So I'm really working with the 3D technology a lot now.
Also, are they going to think of bringing up that Titanic, or are they going to leave it there?
I think we'll probably just leave it there. What do you think, Ken? Leave it there?
Last question, sir.
Yeah, perhaps you could comment about how the site has changed from the time when Ballard discovered the Titanic until now, given all the relics that have been brought up for display in museums and so forth.
Did everybody hear the question? How has the site of the Titanic changed since it was first discovered, and given all the artifacts that have been brought up by the recovery teams? I'll deal with the last part first, and that is that despite the 6,000 plus artifacts that have been recovered by RMS Titanic Inc. since 1987, on my 4 dives, I passed over a significant amount of the debris field at various points, approaching the stern section or the bow section and so forth on these dives. And I seldom saw anything that looked as if it had been disturbed. You do see sub-tracks here and there, little skid marks from the skis, as it were, that are on the bottom of the subs. But and you could see little spots where things had been touched or something might have been removed. That's maybe 5% of the time. The rest of the time I was just amazed at how much debris is out there, how many incredible, wonderful, beautiful things that have not even been touched, and for all I know have not even been discovered or seen before. That's the debris field. As far as the ship itself, there is significant deterioration since it was found in 1985 and first photographed by Bob Ballard in 86 closely from a submarine. And you can, it's best if you just read the book. You'll see a lot of what's happened to the ship. The upper decks are a very thin steel compared with the hull itself, and those thin decks, which are only about 1/4 of an inch thick, major holes are opening up, and it's collapsing down onto A deck. And the officers' quarters roof and over the Marconi room, for example, has quite a few holes in it now that simply weren't there in 85 and 86. So we've been able to do a lot of comparison with that early imagery, and the ship is there's no doubt about it, it is deteriorating.
Yeah, I think the rationale for us imaging the inside of the ship is that because the ship is breaking down, we think of it as kind of this eternal thing at the bottom of the ocean. Now that it's been discovered, it's almost like it's imprinted in our collective consciousness as the wreck, the way we see it in the movies or in Ghost of the Abyss or whatever. But obviously, eventually, it's just going to be a mound of rust on the bottom of the Atlantic. So the rationale for going inside and imaging it using our robotics is that the ship was not photographed, as Don mentioned earlier, when it existed above water. They didn't expect it to sink 4.5 days into its operational life. I think they assumed that they'd photograph it in New York when it got there, or as it made its various crossings. And so most of the photos you see are actually pictures from the sister ship, Olympic. And so we have an opportunity with these vehicles to go in and actually see what was inside Titanic, which has never been known. Now, I'm not going to go back and redo the movie to make the sets 100% accurate. I'll settle for the 97% accuracy that we seem to have now.
And if we could just oblige the photographers, gentlemen, if you could stand up with a copy of the book, and then we will have everyone, and I won't make any women and children references, but line up in an orderly fashion to get your book signed.
please.
By the way, regarding getting everyone lined up in an orderly fashion, all of you do have priority numbers. There is a taped line on the floor where the red thing starts right there, where the red is on the white. Hello, how you doing? We're asking if people do just the book, please. I appreciate that. We're really on a tight time limit. He's got a 3:45 flight tomorrow. Okay. Yeah.
Which one? Where'd you see it?
Thanks for listening to me. Appreciate that very much.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
joining
that's a really nice place to see it.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate that.
If I could get a quick signature on this as well.
Well, why don't we not do that?
Okay.
I want to start a trend.
Because the woman is in there, right? That's why.
No, she is there.